Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
In a world of limited resources, we better work on what's broke, what will give us the return on our investment, not just things that necessarily bug us.
Welcome to the 5th season of the Woodworking Network podcast and a new episode. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by FDMC Magazine. My guest is Bobbo Buckley, author of the newly revised True 32 Flow Manufacturing book and leader of the Good Profit Group. But first, I want to talk about who is an expert. Everywhere you turn, there is somebody or something that talks about what experts say. But everybody these days seems to think they are an expert about something. All the TV news stations are filled with talking heads who either claim to be experts themselves or are trumpeting what experts say. Social media overflows with armchair experts who pontificate about everything. Even the folks who don't claim to be experts are often admonishing people to follow the science or pay attention to the experts or officials. But who are the experts anyway? How did they get to be experts? When it comes to business intelligence, these are crucial questions. Who can you turn to for advice on how to run your business or make improvements? There's an old joke that the definition of a business consultant is somebody who comes from more than 50 miles away, tells you what your employees have been telling you all along, and then gives you a bill. Too often, so-called experts or consultants are worse than that. They don't even bother to interview your employees. They come with some preconceived plan and figure they can shoehorn your shop to fit it. Many don't even have any practical experience that has forged the advice that they share. I'm amazed at how many times I've heard of consultants at major prestigious firms being freshly minted MBAs with little to no practical experience in the real world. The word expert has its root in a Latin word that means to try. Related words such as experience and experiment share the same root and suggest there ought to be some practical history in the resume of a true expert. I've always given more credibility to the expertise of people who have actually done something over someone who has just read about it. I've reported on CNC automation for more than 25 years, but I learned a lot more once I started to actually use a CNC router myself. I've been doing that for more than a year, and I would never consider myself an expert. Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000-hour rule based on earlier research that suggested it takes at least 10,000 hours of practice to gain master proficiency at almost anything. That's equivalent to 20 hours a week for 10 years. So should all supposed experts have at least 10,000 hours of hands-on experience in their expertise? Maybe. I've met people who were unnaturally insightful in their observations, even on things which they had little real experience on. I think the real lesson here is to continue to question and test everything, even and especially what supposed experts say. I've learned personally that things I thought were true did not work as promised in the real world. I've found ways of doing things that worked well for me, but I had been previously assured by experts that they would not work at all. Taking advice from consultants and similar ilk might be a good starting point, but rigorous testing is always in order. Whatever your politics, maybe Ronald Reagan was right about one thing. Trust, but verify. Before we get to our interview with Bobbo Buckley, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. FDMC Magazine is your vital source of information to improve your woodworking business. Whether it's keeping you apprised of the latest advances in manufacturing, helping you solve your wood technology problems with Gene Wengert, or inspiring you with case histories about successful businesses and best practices, FDMC Magazine is there to be the sharpest business tool in your shop. Learn more and subscribe for free at woodworkingnetwork.com/FDMC. Now let's meet Bobbo Buckley. Today my guest is Bobbo Buckley, author of the newly revised True 32 Flow Manufacturing book and leader of the Good Profit Group. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Bobbo.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. And I am attempting to not say so you can call me out every time I do.
Well, what made you decide to revisit this book that you originally published in 1999 and create a new updated version? What did you hope to accomplish?
Well, I really didn't hope to accomplish anything. I kind of got slammed by somebody that bought the book and said, I bought this book and there's nothing about CNC in it. And I thought, well, you're right. There wasn't, CNC wasn't a thing back then. So it had just barely begun and they were machine shop machines. And we were toying with the idea, but we certainly hadn't done it yet. So I felt like that was a piece that needed to be addressed. And of course, once I got started down that rabbit hole, I expanded it in a lot of areas. But that was the primary motivator is, I didn't want people to feel like they kind of were cheated when they bought a book that was written in 1999, but that it didn't address CNC. And then the whole, outsourcing has changed so much in those years. I mean, just you could buy doors, but you couldn't buy drawer boxes and cabinet parts and all that. So felt like I needed to address that as well.
Yeah, well, and the reality is that you were experimenting with CNC not long after the original book came out.
Yeah, very close, just a couple years. Absolutely, yes.
So you were on top of it, but it wasn't in print.
That's exactly. I mean, the book did predate CNCs being much of a thing in the cabinet industry. The guys that had CNCs were big shops, and they were buying basically the same machine a machine shop would buy, and they were struggling with how to make software to work. And we were investigating it, but and I mentioned it, but we certainly didn't cover it. And I did attempt to address that in the revised edition, and then also all the other things that have changed in our industry, which are numerous.
But with all the advantages of 32 millimeter frameless construction, it seems so obvious to me. But it has been more than 50 years since it was introduced in Europe, and it still struggles to get 50% of the market in the United States. Why is that?
Well, I hate to place blame, but a lot of blame could be in the engineering portion of it, trying to basically take a face frame cabinet, remove the frame, and call it frameless or full access or frame zero. Typically creates all sorts of issues. If you build the cabinet just like you built a face frame cabinet and then try to hold 3 millimeter reveals and screw those cabinets to unplumb, unlevel walls and floors, it's impossible to adjust the doors and drawers. So installers are kind of the gatekeepers. They're basically saying, I don't want to install this stuff if you build it wrong. And they also don't really want to install it in a lot of cases if you do it right, because they're really good at what they do. But if you introduce leg levers and suspension system, they have no clue, and they're just not brave enough to be kind of dumb for a few minutes to learn
People
this
don't
new
like
thing.
the change.
The resistance to change, and you really have to, and I don't think I really addressed this in the book, but you really have to rethink how you pay them as well. You can't pay an installer the same way, definitely not by the linear foot, which is how Home Depot, Lowe's, big box stores pay them. You can't pay them that way. It's a different thing. You're installing something completely different with a lot more components than a linear combined joined cabinetry. A lot of, like a sink cabinet, 3-drawer stack, 3, 4, 5 cabinets can be combined in a face frame world. In the full access world, you could do it, but it certainly doesn't make any sense. And now they're installing components, and so you have to pay them differently. And that's a negative. But a lot of the big boys have introduced a full access line that is really just a face frame cabinet without a frame. Installers hated it and they pull back. And so that's kind of one of the resistance areas. And even in the outsourced world, what has been introduced that's available if you want to buy cabinet components, many of those don't give you the option for leg levelers and suspension system. And it's just really difficult to install cabinets perfectly plumbed, perfectly level on unperfect walls and imperfect floors in the absence of having those tools, the leg levelers and the suspension system. So there's resistance. Once somebody learns that, is brave enough to take a few minutes to learn something new and add to their skill set, then it becomes a magical thing. Almost everybody that actually, it's almost like the Christian conversion. You know, it's kind of hard to explain to what it was like before. You know what it was like before you were saved, but you don't know. The guy that's not saved doesn't know what it's like. So you know both positions. Well, the same thing with full access. Until you've used leg levers and suspension system, it's amazing the arguments you'll get from somebody that's never used them, and yet they have very firm convictions, and they will share them with you vehemently.
Oh yeah. I talk to people all the time about, are totally convinced that frameless cabinets won't stand up to use, and then they don't realize that in Europe they call them kitchen furniture, and they move them from house to house. I don't think our face frame cabinets would stand up to be moved from house to house. But now I have to ask you, we've known each other since we were part of the small group of people that founded the Cabinet Makers Association.
We were giving them in then.
Yeah, in 1998. You were the first treasurer. I was the first executive director. But back then you were Bob. When and how did Bobbo happen?
So Bobbo predates Bob. Bobbo was my childhood name. And again, just one of my Bible studies was leading me through a thing about, the 10 Commandments and the fifth commandment being respect your parents. And at the same time, I happened to visit my mom. It was a motorcycle journey, one of my many motorcycle journeys. And I went on a ride with two friends. One was an elementary school friend, one was a high school friend. And at lunch, I said, "Hey guys, y'all mind if we go by and visit my mom?" And they said, No, not at all. And so we did. And when they left, my mom was just a little upset. And I'm like, what's the matter, Mom? She said, "Well, Mike was calling you Bobbo, which I would expect, but this Danny guy was calling you Bob. Why was he calling you Bob?" I said, "Well, Mom, about high school times, I got tired of the teachers when they called roll calling me Bobo. So I just started going by Bob." But out of respect for my mom, trying to honor the fifth commandment, out of respect for our parents, I started putting it on my business cards again, and just putting it everywhere, using it on social media. The happy byproduct, I had absolutely no clue that this would happen. But right now, if you go and Google Bob Buckley, I'll be on about page 10. And I did publish a book in 1999. But there are other authors, there's doctors, there's attorneys, there's a lot of Bob Buckleys in the world. But guess how many Bobbo Buckleys there are in the world? So the benefit has been extreme. I mean, if you Google Bobbo Buckley, you will find me. The whole first page will be almost all me, very few exceptions. If you Google Bobbo Buckley, I'll be on about page 10. So good byproduct of it, but it was just literally out of honor of respecting my mother's, why are these people calling you Bob? Well, I'm not going to have that. It won't be because of me anymore. I won't feed it. I'll at least start using it publicly and personally. So,
one of the things I like most about your book is how you kept most of the original content, but added updates that show your thought processes and experimentation with new technologies and techniques to empirically develop improved methods. Continuous improvement is a buzz phrase for a lot of people, but it seems like you really take it to heart. You're always questioning and re-examining.
It is in my DNA. It seems to be the case that extreme organization kind of goes along with the when it comes to chocolate, resistance is futile. There's some things that are just built into me. And when it comes to chocolate, resistance is futile. But also in that same DNA, just, really hyper or extreme organization is part of that. and then just test everything. It just is built in. I want to do that. I still, I'm still resistant at times. I was working with a client in the field 2 weeks ago, and we started kind of playing around with the ideas of some Russian guys that were working for the owner of that company. They're using a chalk line in installation, and I never used it. I mean, I used a chalk line when I did framing and things like that, but I never used a chalk line as a cabinet maker. But laying out cabinets, they use a chalk line. And so I played with it for a few hours, different ways of, how does this work? What's the best way? Is it really a valid way? In the absence of a laser level to kind of identify where you're going to snap the line, it's not useful. But if you have a laser and um, you want to try it, so I tested it. I probably would never use it again, but I'm willing to test anything. I'm willing to try anything, see if it improves. So, and I don't want to abandon too soon either. I think too many people abandon ship too soon. I want to test something far enough along to know that it wasn't just my inexperience or my biases that are keeping me from moving forward in this direction. So I'm always willing to test almost anything, even if it's just a new pencil with a big fat lead instead of a skinny lead.
That's great. Well, another thing that's important about the book is how you've integrated discussions of flow and the theory of constraints into 32 millimeter construction. Why is that important?
Well, in my world, I'm a car guy. I don't know that everybody knows that, but I'm a car guy. And so the analogy for me is lean and flow, or lean, TOC and lean, however you want to say that, is kind of like that red key, black key for the Hellcats. Whether they're a Charger or a Challenger, it doesn't matter. But when you buy a Hellcat, you get two keys. You get a black key to give to your wife, and you get a red key for you. Black key's 500 horsepower, red key 700 horsepower. Lean is 500 horsepower, TOC is 700 horsepower. So I am a believer that lean is awesome. Lean is great. It's the best toolbox you have for solving issues, but it doesn't help you as easily or as well or as definitively as TOC in identifying what I should be working on. It's basically fix everything at once, everything that bugs you. I prefer to find the thing that's limiting my company, identify it, and walk through those 5 steps.
More focused that way.
I believe so. I believe, and it applies to everything in life. It's children, grandchildren, business, all the things. It's everything. It really applies to everything. You find the weakest link. Whether I have a client that, I know you were not doing the video, but I'm going to show it to you. But basically, I'm holding up a monster chain. I used to have a little baby chain, but now I have a monster chain, and it has 5 links, and the center link is yellow. One of our Good Profit Group members gave me that. And that's to represent, you got these, let's say that 4 of those links are steel, and 1 of them is plastic. What if we took a steel link and made it titanium? What does that do to the chain? How much stronger is the chain because we changed 1 of the steel links into titanium, which is a stronger, or chromium, or any of those type metals? How much stronger is the chain? None. The plastic link is still so if we improve any of those links, we've achieved nothing more than a phantom improvement. But if we fix the plastic link, even nominally, we've improved the strength of the chain. So
Yes.
that, finding what to work on and working on that rather than working on things that are just going to provide a phantom improvement. In the world of limited resources, which is the world that almost every cabinet maker lives in, I don't know too many cabinet makers that have unlimited resources unless their wife happens to be, the CEO of Google. They have limited resources. In a world of limited resources, we better work on what's broke, what will give us a return on our investment, not just things that necessarily bug us.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, much of the book is detailed discussions of techniques and equipment, and there's a very personal story at the end of the book talking about how you decided it was time to close your cabinet shop and retire, largely in the face of what you saw as government overreach into your business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I will, and I'll have to say, and I think that you will applaud me in saying so, that I am incredibly encouraged by what's happening in Argentina right now in Javier Milei. So I have not seen anything politically in my lifetime that has been as encouraging as what's happening there. And I just believe the fruits of what he's doing, hard things, very hard things, will propagate throughout the world. I pray that they will. I believe there's a possibility of that. But yes, to this day, I currently don't have anything on my desk that falls into, I have a folder on my computer called government crap. I have a calendar called government crap, and it tells me all the things that I have to deal with the government. So it just feels burdensome as a small business. If we want one employee, we have to do everything that we would have to do if we wanted 1,000 employees. That's just wrong. There should be some incremental way of easing your way into a single employee, 2 employees, 3 employees. You shouldn't have to do all the same things to have as few employees as you do to have 1,000 employees. But just everything feels burdensome. And for years, I just paid people to do that, and I didn't feel that burden. But when 2007 hit, really for me, 2007 was the best year I ever had. But 2008 is when it actually hit in Middle Tennessee for me. I had to do everything, and the burden became just, to me, unbearable. The splinter in my mind either needed to be extracted, which ultimately it was, but not before I made the hard decision of closing the shop. But yes, TOSHA, Tennessee's version of OSHA, drove the last nail in that coffin, and I just said, they challenged me, and I said, watch this. I don't drink beer, so I couldn't say hold my beer, so I just said, watch this. And I closed it, and I don't regret that. The Lord has led me in a bunch of different ways, and I'm doing things that I absolutely love to do. I feel like that I am probably more effective at helping the industry in the position I'm in now. I was really good at helping my company and my employees and my customers in that environment, but I'm better at helping the entire industry today than I was when I was running a cabinet shop and doing True 32 as kind of a side gig. So
now, after you closed the shop, you played some golf and enjoyed your grandkids and tried some other enterprises outside of cabinet manufacturing. What made you come back?
Well, you could attribute 90, not 90, but a whole bunch of it to one man, Thomas Clayton, probably more than anybody else. Thomas Clayton went to visit him years and years ago. He came to visit me. It was our first meeting. He saw probably the article you wrote. It was either the article you wrote or the article that
Bruce Plants
wrote on my shop. There's 2 articles a couple years apart, but he saw one of those articles and he called me and he said, "Can I come visit with you?" And I said, "Certainly." And he and his brother came and spent a day with me. And you have kindred spirits in your life. We don't get together often, but when we're at shows, we almost always get together. There's kindred spirits in your life, and Thomas Clayton was one of those people. And but I was heading to Florida on the motorcycle on a trip, and stopped in to visit with him, and he introduced me to a hotel there. It was just a really cool concept. I love the place, and now we stop every time we go to. My dad lives in Naples, Florida, and every time we go, it's halfway between Nashville, Tennessee, a little town called Nashville, Georgia, is halfway between Nashville, Tennessee, and Naples, Florida. And so we stop and we visit with them, and every time we did that, coming and going, we would always have dinner, breakfast at times, whatever. Thomas just always said, your voice is missed in the industry. That it didn't take a lot, but he just always reminded me of that. I miss your voice in the industry, and I think others miss your voice in the industry. So the vast majority of it was Thomas. And by the time Mike Lee at Cabinotch called, I wasn't back in the industry. I was doing IT work for a printing company when Mike Lee at Cabinotch called. But when he called, I probably, if he had known my current mental state, he could have said, "Hey, we want you to work for free. Would you do that?" I probably would have said, "Absolutely," if it's in the cabinet industry. Fortunately, I didn't say that, and they did pay me. But that it wasn't a hard jump for me. I was anxious to become, I could help anybody in the IT and the organizational department, any company, but I missed this industry desperately. And busy is not the same thing as productive. I had lots to do. Rode around the country on a motorcycle, like turned my whole backyard into a garden with some fruit trees, and again, a little golf here, grandchildren, whatever. But it's not the same thing as waking up with a mission to get something done that will help more than just yourself. So I missed that part.
Now tell us about your Good Profit Group. What is that, and how did that come about?
Well, the very tool we're using certainly helps that. This happened to be Zoom, but we're using Jitsi now. We've used Google Meet. We've used Zoom. But in the True 32 world, I had people that came to me, spent a week at my shop, and I certified them as a True 32 manufacturer. And I did that for years and years and years and years. And there's a lot of those guys around the country. And the only tool we had for community, and I think that every cabinet maker really needs to take this to heart, that if you don't have community, you will not have an effective ongoing improvement system. You need other people breathing life into your business. You're living on an island if you never leave your shop, if you never go to a trade show, if you never join the CMA, you never join something like Good Profit Group. But community is important. And so we had, you were a key part of that. The first forum that I'm aware of, there might have been another one, but the first woodworking forum that I'm aware of was Cabinet Maker Magazines. The second was WoodWeb. I think our True 32 forum was the third. And then it kind of grew from there. And then the Cabinet Makers Association came along. So that provided a venue and their own forum. So that provided a venue for this community type thing. But I got the kind of a baptism by fire for the guy that I was doing IT work. He was a member of C12. I don't know how many people are familiar with C12. When I first heard of it, I thought, why would somebody name something C12? I mean, it tells you nothing. I have no idea what C12 is. But it's a Christian organization built on the 12 disciples kind of thing. The idea, it's 12 men around a table. And I seriously, while I wasn't in the cabinet industry, considered becoming a part of C12, becoming a chair for C12. And when I found out fairly early on, well, you can only have one cabinet maker in each of your three groups. So I can only have three cabinet makers that I'm dealing with. Yep, that's the way it works. And I'm like, nah, I'm out. But I love the format. And so Good Profit Group is patterned after C12, that we have a mastermind group and we have a peer advisory group. The peer advisory group is more like C12. There's lots of masterminds in the world. The mastermind meets for an hour once a week, every Monday. And the peer advisory group meets bi-monthly, two meetings, 3 hours long. And then I have 1 hour one-on-ones with everybody in the peer advisory group meeting. So that community that we had in the woodworking forum is expanded by a factor of at least 10 at that point. The amount of time you get to spend with someone else working on your business, whether them working in your business, but also someone who does what you do for a living, someone that walks in your shoes. They feel your pain. That is an incredible asset. And so I haven't really tried hard to grow it. I kind of made an initial push, and then we've just kind of lived the seasons. This has been three and a half years now. October will be 4 years that we've been doing it. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of work for me, but it's just been a lot of fun. And it provides a piece that I think every cabinet maker needs, not necessarily Good Profit Group, but every cabinet maker better go to some trade shows from time to time. You will burn out in the absence of having that community with other cabinet makers. And I think that, and I hope I don't step on any toes because I know you're involved in a lot of things, but I think that having the educational things at the shows sometimes distracts you from building community. You're so busy trying to see the show and get the educational component. So we're kind of taking the educational component to a weekly, bi-weekly thing, doing it all through the year so that we go to the show, we can just completely delve into what's on the floor together, walk the floor together, and really, talk about what we're seeing. And sometimes if you walk it alone, you'll just miss really good things. But if you're walking it with 5 or 6 people, somebody will see, hey, that's cool. Let's stop and look at that. So we're able to kind of remove the time that the educational track takes away from the show floor. And then we do have some, you've been with us out to eat and Top Golf and all the other things we do. So we try to build the community. So building each other up, iron sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another.
That's great. Well, once again, the book is called True 32 Flow Manufacturing, Revised and Expanded by Bobbo Buckley. And you can find it on Amazon. This has been great, Bob. I always enjoy talking to you and meeting the people in your Good Profit Group. It's great.
Awesome.
That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, FDMC Magazine. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson at woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.